think you might still be on mute.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Tice. I'm the chair of PTAC committee. It is October 12th, and welcome everyone to PTAC committee. So, Serena, do you want to go over the long...
Yeah. Whatever you call it. Yeah, good evening. My name's Serena Pearson, and as Heather said, basically Adam and myself will be facilitating this Zoom meeting. We'll work alongside Heather to facilitate the meeting proceedings. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and public access channel 25. I just want to provide a few reminders to ensure that the provisions of the Kansas Open Meeting Act are met. Committee members, you must state your name and title each time you speak. All motions will need to be stated clearly. After a motion is made and seconded, I will call on committee members individually to provide their vote. The chair will then need to announce whether the motion carried and the count of the vote. Members of the public are allowed to speak to regular agenda items. General public comment will be received in person or in written form at the beginning of the meeting. Individuals who signed up in advance to provide public comment remotely will be called upon by name. When you are called on, please unmute your listening device and state your name before speaking. The chair will then call for in-person public comment for those without access to technology options. Staff present will direct you to the podium to speak, following social distancing and safety protocols. During the meeting, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon found on the lower left hand of the Zoom menu next to the video icon. When you're muted, a red line will appear over the icon. Muting your microphone during the meeting will make it easier for everyone to hear. You'll just have to remember to unmute if and when you want to speak. In some cases, I or Adam may have to mute or unmute people as needed. Each time you speak, please remember to state your name and title for the benefit of those listening remotely. In the menu, you can turn off your camera on or off by clicking the video icon. For the purposes of this public meeting, please keep your video on during the meeting. If you are participating by phone, you can click *6 to unmute your phone. For those using Zoom, somewhere on your screen you will see a choice to toggle between speaker and gallery view. Speaker view shows the active speaker. Gallery view tiles all the meeting participants. And now I'll turn the meeting back over to Heather Tice.
This is Heather Tice, PTAC chair. Thank you very much, Serena, for your description of how this works. I'm going to ask for public comment. I know, is there anybody at the City Hall right now?
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. There's no one here, but I know we have Deanna Mylander on the call who had signed up to speak with us all tonight.
Okay. All right. I would like to invite Deanna to speak, to talk about whatever. Would you like to start?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Just wanted to introduce myself. My name's Deanna Mylander, and I'll be the new general manager for a new business in town called Klein Lawrence. And that'll be located in the building at 714 Vermont Street, which is basically right where the transfer hub is located right now. So the biggest thing I wanted to address is just opening up a dialogue about the safety concerns I have centered around the transfer hub being right in front of our building. One thing that we're going to offer is just climbing for the community. So we're going to have a lot of additional foot traffic in that area. We'll have youth classes. The idea is that it's going to be a very vibrant, bustling climbing community coming in and out of that building. Now, my big concern is with that line of buses there's a pretty large visual blockade, and I've seen multiple cars just whipping around those buses, and it makes me extremely nervous for any kids, any adults coming out of that building to be crossing the street over into the parking garage or wherever they may find parking. And I just wanted to open up a dialogue about possibly getting the buses to move down just to behind that ATT tower so that we could hopefully alleviate some of these concerns that I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Adam, do you want to put it to, should I put it to the group to answer, or do you want to start?
I can certainly add just a little bit of context from Lawrence Transit, but then, yeah, I'd welcome PTAC members if they had clarification for Deanna or for myself. So I know that, for close to a decade, really, Lawrence Transit has been looking for an adequate transfer facility space. The space that we're in downtown right now is not ideal, and I don't know if there's a whole lot of options for us to have transfers between the eight transit lines that are down there. So this really has been, we've been in our current temporary location since 2013. We are, working towards the transit facility at Bob Billings and Crestline on the KU property there. And the timeline for that is, the goal is to be opening there in August of 2022. So over the next 9 months or so to be, facilitating a lot of community discussion around route redesign, so that we know ultimately how many buses still need to come downtown. And once we know that, figuring out the appropriate space for that bus service to still remain. So I do recognize, as Deanna does, that there is a lot of traffic in that block and a lot of pedestrian and vehicle activity. There are some challenges with the 800 block where we have temporarily used, when there's been sidewalk work or other issues, we've temporarily gone to the 800 block. Part of the challenge with, on a more permanent basis, doing that is sidewalk there is a lot more limited. There's a 5-foot sidewalk through that area. On the 700 block, we have 15 feet in a lot of areas and 10 feet in others, as well as benches and shelters and just closer access to the restroom facilities of the library. So of the not great options that we have to work with downtown, the 700 block has some things about it that do help us. So I'll probably leave it there, but would welcome, if folks want to ask Deanna some follow-up, or myself.
This is Heather Tice, PTAC chair. Is there anybody on PTAC that has any comment or thoughts? Okay.
This is Mike Monskowski, PTAC member. I wanted to ask Deanna, are you envisioning that not the word permanently isn't the right word, are you envisioning that we would permanently move buses from stopping by a block for the next, say 2 years?
The ideal for me is just to have it not directly in front of the building. So, I understand that you're limited on space, and that makes sense to me. But if it could just get pushed back to right behind the ATT tower, that would give you half of that block. I noticed when I was just looking at the building, there's the little transfer shelter there as well. Basically, that shelter and back, that would be my hope and goal, that for the next 2 years, until you can actually get that permanent facility, that you could just shift those buses back slightly. And I know that has complications, but I think being proactive about it, especially, for the sake of safety of everybody, I think is ultimately going to be the better choice, even though I know you're going to have to relocate in another 2 years anyway.
This is Mike Wazakowski again with PTAC. My concern with sliding back is more that I believe we end up using all of that space between 7th and 8th Street at various times throughout the day. and there's no easy way to fit 8 buses in the space that we would normally fit 4. It's not simply a matter of, we'd have to find a new place for those other 4 buses as well. And I'm not sure that moving it so that it's like, say, half between 7th and 8th Street on the south end, and then half on the north end between 8th and 9th Street is much better. I mean, at that point, you're putting buses next to a major parking lot that has a lot of foot traffic as well. So I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't have a good answer, unfortunately. Over.
This is Heather Tice, PTAC chair. I also wanted to mention that, you know, over the years, it had the buses have moved their location a number of times, and I'd like to say that in my history with PTAC, nobody really wants the station right in front of them. So I'm not saying that that this isn't something that we need to look at or at least talk about, but I'm just saying you're not the first and you won't be the last. Wherever we park buses, there's going to be some business that is feeling like that is inconvenient or a safety issue or something like that. So I just wanted to mention that. And I was thinking that maybe there should be more clear lines on, there's a lot of jayhawk walking. There's a lot of jaywalking in that space. So I just want to make sure that, you know, as you guys are having classes and stuff like that, make sure that you're directing folks to go to the crosswalk. It is much safer. So that's all I had to say about that. Is there any other comment or question or concern?
Yeah, so I guess my next question would be, I know any business is going to be feeling put off and concerned about having the buses. Is there nowhere else in the downtown Lawrence area that would potentially be kind of an open space where businesses wouldn't be negatively affected and pedestrians wouldn't be negatively affected, that you would be able to consider? I mean, my main concern is we're doing a lot to try to make this area really nice and really wonderful for the community. And my concern is that it'll just be extremely detrimental to have the buses in front of us. We're going to have a small cafe there. We're going to have bus fumes. I mean, it's so close to our business where the cafe is going to be. And I just feel like it's going to so negatively impact us and our climbing community that I just have to ask you to really think about the betterment of Lawrence here, and really consider if there's any other option in terms of parking. To me, it's very vulnerable and very scary already to be opening up a business, and then to have this kind of huge block where people don't necessarily feel safe going is even worse. I mean, and at the bare minimum, I would at least hope and pray that I could ask you guys to ask the bus drivers to turn off their engines. We just have a parade of fumes going into the building right there. And to me, that just seems just extremely unhealthy and kind of a toxic environment for people to be trying to enter into a business.
This is Heather Tice, PTAC chair. I totally understand what you're saying. I think my 2 cents on that is that there may be some reasons why they leave them running because of the engine, but I may be wrong. Is there someone that would be able to speak to that a little bit?
This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. Ginger, I know you're on the call. Do you want to speak to that?
Ginger Dahl, Transit Manager for First Transit. They do say running, the buses actually service a cooling station and a heating station in the different climates. And so by shutting them off, you actually emit more fumes by turning them back on. I do understand the concerns, but there is a reason that they are going. But we can definitely get back to you with our maintenance manager to explain it a little more.
Okay, this is Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. Is there any other comment or questions?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment here.
Can you speak a little louder?
Yeah, this is Gina, PTAC member. I'm not sure how things are going to change with the new business there, but I will speak to how I have known this section of the Vermont street, because I go there often. I'm a user of the bus. I go to the public library about 2 times a week, and I also use the buses for transfer from there. From what I know over the years, from 2016, I live here since 2015, but since 2016, I use this bus. And I've learned about the character of that section of the Vermont Street. It's amazing. Well, because of the public library and its attraction of families and little children. And then there is behind the public library, the public pool, also for children, and a park for families and kids. So because of that, it seems to me from observation that that section of the, whenever a motorist approaches that section of the Vermont Street, they drive very slowly. So it has been pretty safe during that period. I mean, I also support what Adam says in the exchange between Diana and, yeah, himself and Diana over the email. So I've never heard of an incident taking place there. And then if we compare with the Jayhawk Boulevard, which is a narrower street and has all the buses running on it day and sometimes, I mean, even during the night because of the need, students' need for transit. So on that street, in comparison to the Vermont Street, sees buses running on both sides. And with students, scholars, and everybody on the Jayhawk, they crisscross and think of the Jayhawk Boulevard as their own priority. So they jump in front of the bus, and that street is really busy, and I've never seen any casualties, any incidents. So I'm not sure about safety. So I feel like from what from the comment that was made and the plans for the gym, it seems that with the opening of the gym, we're going to see a change in traffic and a change in behavior there, so that section of the Vermont Street is going to become less pedestrian and more motorist attraction. So that's for that. Now for the fume and pollution, if you think about the Massachusetts Street with all the restaurants and the dining outside, people are dining with all these cars packing the Massachusetts Street. So everybody, I mean, no one complained about pollution while eating outside of the restaurants. So I avoid the Massachusetts streets because of the traffic there and because of the amount of cars that, I mean, often packing that street. Now, I want to draw attention to the importance of that location of the transfer. It's, having lived on the west of the 6th Street, I know that there is no connection from there to east of Lawrence, where most of us need to go either for work or for whatever, but mostly from my knowledge, again, using the bus for 5-6 years, a lot of people go from apartments along the 6th Street to jobs, to their work locations on the east of Lawrence, and this is the only connection. So this bus transfer location is essential for people's economic development, and together with that is the city's economic development. So now I understand Diane's, I hope that I'm saying her name correctly, for the issue of visual blockade. That's an issue because the place has big windows, and I assume that these big windows are gonna stay there, and it's gonna be the exit to the outside. What I would, it won't work to move all the buses beyond the AT&T building because there isn't space, and a lot of people who come downtown use it for parking, and it is the purpose of that parking lot. So it won't work. What I'm thinking for a temporary solution, I'm not sure, I do not know when the gym is gonna open, but if it does open much earlier than the city comes up with a permanent transit location, transit hub, which is 2 years and a half from now, maybe one bus would be at one location right in front of the building, because the width of that building is about the width of one of the big city and KU's buses. So I'm thinking one bus would be just like stopping somewhere else and not right in front of the building that is going to be turned into a gym. These are the points that I have on mind. Thank you.
Heather Tice, PTAC Chair, thank you so much for your input. Is there any other comment or question that you have? Okay, go ahead.
This is Margareta DeFries from KU Transportation Services, and I only ask this, we have participate, our buses are part of what's there. I'm curious whether or not you noticed the buses were out there when you chose this location for your business. I mean, they've been there for several years, but historically we started at 9th and Massachusetts, and then we got removed from that location for various reasons. We moved twice since then, and then we ended up at 7th and Vermont as the 4th location that we were downtown. And it's really the only block left that has the footprint required for the number of buses that are downtown. So I don't know what the answer is really, but I just wanted to bring those details up because I know that we've had a long history of moving around. That's why we looked for this permanent location. And even though it will take 2 years to get there, we're working towards getting away from your block, but it can't happen overnight. That's it.
Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. Is there anything else? Because I think we'll need to go to our next agenda item pretty soon. So any other follow-up? Nothing? Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you for at least taking the time to listen to me today and hear me out. And just as a closing thought, I just ask that you all consider any creative solutions that would be possible to at least, is it Janamin recommended moving one bus down. That would be a great starting point that I feel like would be extremely helpful for us as a business. And thank you. Thank you for taking time to listen and hear me.
Heather Tice, PTAC Chair, thank you so much. I appreciate your comments, and we will, it's important that we listen. So thank you so much. Okay.
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager, just to close the loop. I mean, staff is certainly willing to look at some of the things that were brought up tonight and bring them back to the group next month, just so we can take an actual analysis of some of the ideas that were brought forward, just so they don't sit or go nowhere.
Okay, Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. I think we're going to move on to the, actually, I think I skipped a part. Serena, do we need to do like the roll call?
Yeah, we should probably do a roll call and then go ahead and approve the minutes from the last
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah, that I just realized we hadn't done that, so.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess I'll go through the list. Janan is here, and Lance is here with us today, and Heather. Is Phyllis here?
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Phyllis, okay, hi Phyllis.
Thank you.
And Mike Wazakowski is here, and
Here.
Nick Kuzma
Here.
is here, Alan Ackland,
Here.
and Natalie Yoza. She's,
I'm here. I'm sorry I was a little late, but
That's okay. I see you now. Okay, and Bill Wilson.
Yep.
Great. Okay, 100%.
Great. Thank you so
Awesome.
much. Oh, Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. Thank you so much for everybody attending today. I'm going to ask for if everybody's read the minutes and if there's any changes to the minutes.
Phyllis Fair, committee member. I don't know whether this is something that needs to be noted, but I'd like to go on record that at the meeting last month, I was listening in, but was not able to be on Zoom and on microphone. So I was observing, I guess.
Okay.
Heather, go ahead. Oh, Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. Okay, thank you for the feedback on that. Maybe Serena, can you guys check into that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that would make her absent or
This is
present.
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. We'll look at it. I think if you needed to vote on something, I don't think you would have been able to. So on my first take is that the minutes would reflect that you were absent, even though you were there and watching us. But
Okay.
we'll look at it and make sure that's the case.
All right.
Okay.
Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. So is there any changes to our minutes? And if not, I'd like to move to approve. And I'll need a first and a second.
Lance Fay, PTAC Vice Chair, I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you very much. Heather Tice.
Natalie Yoza, I second.
Thank you, Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. Thank you, Natalie and Bill. So with the two motions, I'd like to. Do we need to vote, Serena?
Yeah, we have to vote.
Okay. So
Okay.
do we need to call for that.
Yes, I'll go down the list. Janan,
Approve.
Lance,
I approve.
Heather,
I approve.
Phyllis,
I approve.
Mike,
Approve.
Nick,
I approve.
Alan,
I approve.
Natalie,
Approve.
and Bill.
Approve.
Okay, Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. Thank you all. With all of the votes as approved, I'd like to say this motion carries and the minutes will be approved as distributed.
Right. We'll move on to the next agenda item. the electric bus project update.
This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I'll introduce our team here tonight. So we have Steve Clearmont, Christian Walker, and Chase Stell from the Center for Transportation and the Environment. They will be the project management team. When we submitted our federal grant for electric buses, the work that they will do for us was included in that grant process. So tonight I invited them to talk about what their help looks like and you know, what their partnership with us will look like for the next few years. I do want to say on the front end, we have to be out of this room probably 5:20, 5:25, somewhere in that area. So I'll probably check in maybe a little after 5 p.m. and see where we're at. If we're interested in still discussing electric buses, we can keep going with that, and I can push a couple of the other agenda items, or we can skip to them. But just a heads up that I think we're running a little bit behind, and we'll just check in here in 20 minutes or so and see what we want to do. So with that, I'll turn it over to Steve, Christian, and Chase for their presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Adam. We appreciate the time this afternoon. And again, my name's Steve Claremont. I'm the Director of Planning and Deployment for CTE, the Center for Transportation and the Environment. I'll be the Senior Project Manager on the project. With me today, I've got Christian Walker. Christian.
Hi, I'm Christian.
And Christian is a managing consultant with CTE, and she'll be the project manager on this project. And we've also got Chase Stell. Chase.
Hi, everyone. My name's Chase Stell. I'm an associate at CTE and happy to be here. Thanks.
Terrific. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Give me one moment. All right. Is everybody seeing this?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Thanks. All right. So we're just going to provide you with kind of an overview of the project, some of the things that you can expect to see over the next couple of years as we work through getting you zero-emission buses. So first, if you're not familiar with us, just a quick background of CTE, the Center for Transportation and the Environment. We are a 501c3 nonprofit engineering and planning firm. We've been around for well over 25 years. Over that time, our mission has always been to improve the health of the climate in our communities by focusing on, in the early years, it was low emission vehicles, and then as zero emission vehicles became viable, our entire focus is on zero emission vehicles. We've done a tremendous amount of work in the transit industry, which has always been a great platform to test new technologies. And we're starting to see the benefits of that research and deployment start to trickle out into other market sectors like commercial trucking and delivery and so forth. We do work nationwide. We have 4 offices: Atlanta, Berkeley, Los Angeles, and St. Paul. Just a quick overview of our zero emission bus projects. We do work in other markets. We do work with, as I mentioned before, trucking and ports. So that we do have a lot more projects than just this. But for our bus projects, these are all the transit agencies where either in blue we've worked with deployment projects, which is what yours is considered a deployment project. We're also starting to do a lot of transition planning projects. So agencies that have kind of gone through their pilot bus deployment now want to understand, well, what is it going to take to transform their entire fleet over to zero emissions? So we're starting to do a lot of those studies as well. If you're not familiar with zero emission buses, I just wanted to give you a quick background on what you can expect. They are, it's a significantly different technology, and as a result, we need to understand how the technology is different so that we can properly plan and deploy these vehicles. First of all, one of the reasons why we go to zero emission is not only because it's zero emission, but also the efficiency of these vehicles. They use energy much more efficiently than any other technology out there. So you can see your typical diesel bus is going to get about 4 miles per gallon, whereas an all-electric bus will get something on the order of 12 to 18. We've even seen it as higher than 20 diesel gallon equivalents per mile because they're so efficient. But also you can see the width of this bar here, the height of it. There's a lot of variation in the efficiency of a vehicle compared to a diesel vehicle. So that means there's a lot more planning that's required here. Some other little tidbits about a battery electric bus. So a standard diesel bus carries about a 100-gallon tank. So that 100-gallon tank will allow you to go about 400 miles. Whereas the batteries of a battery electric bus, and in this case, a 450 kilowatt hour battery pack, provides or offers about the equivalent of 12 diesel gallons. So the amount of energy that's stored on that battery. So you would never ever consider leaving the depot with only 12 gallons of fuel on your bus. You always fill up your bus before you take it out. But fortunately, so the battery electric bus is only 12, the equivalent of 12 diesel gallons. I go back to that efficiency, it being 4 times as efficient as a diesel gallon. It kind of operates effectively as about a 48-gallon tank because of that level of efficiency. But it still isn't equal to 100 gallons. So right off the bat, you can see that there's a difference in the challenge that you're not going to be able to go as far with a battery electric bus as you would with a diesel bus. One of the other key considerations is battery degradation. I mean, we're all familiar with our cell phones, and the first year you have it, the battery seems to last forever, but as you own it year after year, the battery is significantly less. I know that I have to charge mine several times a day, it seems. And that's because batteries do degrade over time. The other key things are, with a battery, there's certain portions of that battery that they don't allow you to use. And we call that the unusable energy at both the top end and the bottom end, because generally you don't want to allow the batteries to drop down to a very low state of charge because it could be damaged, or you don't want to charge it up to 100% because it could be damaged as well. So that creates what we call our service energy. You might also want to have a reserve amount of energy as well to basically use as a safety net. So take the unusable portions and the reserve limit to get your service energy, and add in that degradation over time. And we have to manage or understand what service energy is available to you and when it's available to you over time, and how that impacts how you operate your buses. Some other key issues affecting range, the route characteristics, so how fast you go, how frequently you stop, the grade of the hills that you have. Ridership adds load to the bus, so the amount of weight that the bus is moving around can affect efficiency. Heating and cooling has a tremendous amount of impact. In a diesel bus, all your heat is essentially free because you're getting waste heat off the engine that heats the cabin, passenger cabin. And here, with a battery electric bus, you have to create that heat from a heater, and basically the energy you use to create that heat is no longer available to move the bus down the road, so it affects your range. We've mentioned battery degradation and the unusable portion. Also, operator performance. That can, the way your operator drives a bus can affect efficiency tremendously. So what do we do with all of these constraints and issues, and how do you learn to effectively operate your bus? So we use modeling tools, the same tools that most of the auto manufacturers and truck manufacturers use, but we modified it specifically for zero emission buses. So as a result, we can plug in the specifications of the buses that you'll be buying. We'll plug in your route characteristics, and then we can figure out about how far or what duration of time that your bus can operate in a variety of conditions. Nominal conditions being the typical conditions you would operate in, strenuous conditions being those more extreme days with large numbers of passengers and either a very hot or very cold day, and then assess the impact of degradation on your range. We'll also be looking at charging your buses and figuring out what the amount of energy is going to cost you as well. In some cases, depending on the utility and depending on how you charge, you may see a savings as compared to as compared to diesel fuel. In other cases, we see that there isn't a savings, and a large part of this has been driven by the low-cost diesel over the last couple of years. We'll look at when your buses are in service, when they're back at the depot, and when they would be charging, and how we might be able to manage that charge in order to lower your cost of your fuel. Finally, we'll look at the costs of that fuel, and that cost may change over time. Again, we'll be looking to work with your local utility to understand what rates might be available to you and what strategies might be available to reduce the amount of that your energy is going to cost you. But it could change. A lot of times utility rates go up in the summertime as there's a lot more demand on electric utilities during the summer, so the rates will naturally increase. So that's something we'll be looking at as well. Finally, some key lessons learned. Again, you've seen that we've worked with a lot of transit agencies and deploying buses across the country. But some of the takeaways that we've learned from those events or those projects have been, there is a preference for zero emission buses. Both operators and passengers tend to like them. They're a lot quieter than a diesel bus. Obviously, not having any fumes is a key benefit to these buses. Small deployments in small numbers, or at least the initial small number of buses, like 5 battery buses, is, I shouldn't say that they're easy. I would say that they're relatively easy. There will be challenges. There are always challenges that we have during every project. And I expect that we'll have challenges in your project as well, but we have a lot of experience on how we handle those challenges. But this is really to say that compared to deploying 50 buses, and as you start scaling up, the complexity of these projects tend to increase over time. I've already mentioned this before, when and how you charge can impact your costs as well as your operations. Utility rates can be, some are fairly straightforward, some are a lot more complicated, and we'll get into understanding those during the project. Energy consumption for your heating and cooling, HVAC loads, can be larger than propulsion loads. Propulsion loads is the amount of energy it takes to drive down the road, but sometimes on some day it takes more energy to heat a bus. And then finally, planning. Generally, we recommend planning around the worst day that you might experience, not your average day, because if you plan on your average day, at some point in time you'll have a very bad day that you will not be able to make the service. So that's something to consider as well. So let's get into your project. First of all, your project was based on a 2020 LONO award from the Federal Transit Administration. So congratulations on that. You'll be getting 5 40-foot Gillig battery electric buses, which will also include operator and maintenance training. You'll be getting charge point chargers for those buses. You'll go through the design, construction, and installation of charging stations. And then for CTE, as we'll be doing the route and rate modeling, we'll be providing you with technical advisory throughout the entire program. For example, we'll be working with you on your specifications as you go to contract with Gillig and ChargePoint. Also monitoring the bus build, oversight of the construction installation of the charging stations. We'll do some performance validation after you receive the buses and before you put them into service. And then that'll be followed by 1 year of performance, what we call performance monitoring or key performance indicator reporting. And then as well as overall project management. So we do have a methodology that we've fine-tuned over the years of doing similar projects. These are the basic steps. We're currently in the first phase, project planning and initiation, but we'll very quickly get into requirements analysis, and that's where we do all the route modeling and rate modeling. One of the key dates I want to point out here is in the bus and infrastructure deployment. So you'll be getting, the buses will be delivered probably sometime around May of 2022, May or June 2022. Before putting them into service, you'll be going through some acceptance testing, as I mentioned before, performance validation, as well as all the training, operator training, maintenance training, before putting them into service. So we would expect them going into service somewhere around July of 2022. That's our best guess right now. There's a lot of things that can occur during the course of the project that will affect that date. And it's part of the nature of where we are in this industry. This technology is very new. There's constant development taking place on both the charging side, the bus side, the software to run the buses, the software to run the chargers. So there's a tremendous amount of innovation that's taking place and improvement. A lot of times that improvement is taking place during the project, which can lead to some delays. We also see some at times integration issues between buses and chargers, or the infrastructure takes longer to put in place than it does to take delivery of the buses. These are just some of the challenges we end up with. So July 2022 is our target right now, but we'll certainly keep you informed as or if these dates change. So that's our overview of the project and the program and zero emission buses. Are there any questions out there?
I have a question. I'm Janan, PTAC member. Let me see. I had something. Oh, with regards to the, I'm not sure if it was in the presentation, but it was at least in the report that I read, on route fast charges. So the bus will not be able to make a whole route, a whole trip back and forth without recharging.
So that's what we'll be analyzing. Now, certainly, I'm assuming what we're getting is the is a bus with an extended range battery. So one of the largest batteries that are available in the market right now, and that battery will allow you to operate, 8 to 12 to 14 hours. It really all depends on the route that it's put on and the demands that route puts on the bus, and also, as I mentioned before, climate. So that's something that we'll be studying during the project. There is such a thing as en route charge buses. Right now, Gillig hasn't really modeled their bus to be in what they call an en route charge bus. Those are more designed for circulator systems where you would have a smaller battery, and basically you would make one trip and use an en route charger to charge that bus in about 10 minutes. Now, it never charges that bus in 10 minutes fully. It only gives it enough energy to be able to make another loop in that circuit. So that's just a different model of how buses can be used. But I think for your project, we're looking at the extended range bus. And one of the first things we'll be studying is how far would we expect, or how long would we expect that bus to operate in your routes. So, and then we compare it to what your diesel buses are doing now. And if it's something less, we didn't have to come up with a plan of how we address that.
Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. Is there any other questions for Steve?
This is Mike Waskowski, PTAC member. I'm curious, in your previous projects, have you had to build separate electrical substations to be able to supply the amount of energy? And how difficult was that if you did have to do that?
Yeah, so so to date, most projects in the U.S. have been about the size of your project, right? And none of them have required a substation. Now, they may require a service upgrade from your utility or a new transformer or an additional transformer. So that would all be part of the design and construction work that would be included in your project, is to figure out what might be needed for your facility and how to install that and how to work with the utility on, you know, what components they would provide. Now, when you start talking about large numbers of buses and, you know, let's say you're getting up to, you know, 50, 100 to 200 buses, you know, that's when we might start talking about a substation, or, you know, something different needs to be done, because that's a substantial amount of energy that would be required. So with 5 buses, you know, we can probably get away with maybe about a half a megawatt of demand. And, you know, again,
so roughly 100 kilowatts.
This is Margareta DeFries from KU Transportation Services. I actually helped write the grant and have had a conversation with Evergy about the utilities at the building where we would be installing the charging stations. And our current power draw is not so high that it would actually need to be upgraded, but they have agreed that we probably should upgrade while we're doing this process anyway, because of the possibility for future expansion. But I don't have the numbers in front of me because they're on my desk at work, but I do know that we determined that Evergy is on board to help us upgrade the transformer.
Yeah, Evergy, this is Mike Waskowski, PTAC member. Evergy, for those who don't know, runs the clean charge network inside this region that has approximately 1,000 different charging locations throughout the Kansas City metro area, stretching out to here and a few in Wichita as well. That was I know they know how to do this stuff. My concern was mainly making sure that, you know, if we can provide enough power for the 5 buses that we get at first, that's a great thing. But hopefully, I would envision that we would love what the electric buses provide us, and we would want to effectively replace all of our fleet eventually. And if we do that, I agree, we're going to have a substation, because then you're talking about delivering, instead of half a megawatt, you're talking about delivering conceivably 10 to 20 megawatts at a time. And that's a lot of power.
I will tell you that the Evergy person I talked to, one of the engineers, told me that we're using about 1/10 of what our current transformer will allow. And so even upgrading right now isn't necessarily required. It's just that we've talked about doing the work while we're doing the other work so that we don't have to do it again later.
Mm-hmm. And that's something we'll look at when we do the cost analysis, as well as, again, a lot of times you're going to pay based on the size of your transformer, not necessarily how much you use. So we'll be looking at the different rate schedules available to you and make sure you're kind of right-sized for this. And then, you know, the next time you go out and get more buses, maybe that's when you scale up. So, but I'm glad to hear that the utility is on board here and enthusiastic about the project.
This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I'll just add a couple things to that too, that we've also had a couple early discussions with Evergy and Sustainability Office in Douglas County. So they're ready to participate. I think they'll be at our kickoff, our internal staff kickoff that we have with CTE, and then down the road, kind of looking bigger picture, as you alluded to, Mike. I think we will probably within the next couple of years want to look at putting on our schedule, having a zero emission transition plan, I guess is what those are called, to really lay out what we would do to meet our city climate goals and county climate goals, and from a transit perspective. So I think there will be some space to make sure we're not only thinking about the very near term, but longer term as well.
Okay, Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. Thank you so much for your presentation, and I'm excited to get the buses. That's very, very good news.
All right, well, terrific. Well, again, thank you so much for your time today, and we certainly are looking forward to working with everyone in Lawrence. So
Fantastic. Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. Thank you. Adam, do we have time to go to the next agenda item?
We certainly do, yes.
All right, so Redesign Study 1 update. So staff present.
So, just a second here. Okay, this is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. And hopefully you see my screen coming up. So I just got back from a week off. I was moving my wife and dog home from DC, so I have not had a ton of time to get my hands into our initial survey results. We had our first survey for the bus route redesign study number 1 that closed on October 4th. You see the number 614 responses here that we have logged in right now. I do still have some paper surveys that we need to input that we were gathering on the buses, as well as at the library and at the community shelter. So this number will increase by how many, I'm not completely sure at this point, but I feel pretty good about cresting 600 responses. In particular, when you look at other surveys on Lawrence Listens and how well they do, I feel like we really did a great job both from the city side and KU side trying to get out to our respective groups. So most of what you'll see that I go through here will be what I could quickly put into charts. But what I wanted to start out with was just a quick recap of the different things that we did do to get this survey out to folks. So in addition to it being online at Lawrence Listens, we had paper surveys available on buses and at the library. There were some days where First Transit drivers, when they were not extra board drivers that were available to be on route but did not need to be on a given day, they would take clipboards and paper surveys downtown and do intercept surveys with people there, bus riders, to get their input. We had also sent out direct emails to everyone on the city's maintained neighborhood contacts list. So this is largely presidents and vice presidents of neighborhood associations and NIAs. That gave us pretty good inroads for people to invite us to other events. Direct emails to KU students, faculty, and staff went out on September 12th. A few of those follow up to the neighborhood contact list was Old West Lawrence Day. They invited us to Old West Lawrence to table and talk with folks there. We had a couple of Zoom calls, one with the East Lawrence Neighborhood Association and one with the Lawrence Association of Neighborhoods. Wanted to make sure we got good driver input since they're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to routes. So we had roundtables with them on 17th and the 25th where I was available out at the facility for drivers to come in and not only encourage them to engage in this first survey, but really describe what this next couple of years looks like for us in regards to route redesign and facility design and construction. We have partners at the Human Services Coalition send out survey information through their listserv. They are plugged into a lot of the different social service agencies around town. So I think we really reached some audiences there that we maybe wouldn't have otherwise. Also got invited, Breesedale and Haskell neighborhood invited us for a Zoom call / in-person meeting. There were people in the room as well as on Zoom. And then Serena helped us table at East Lawrence Neighborhood Association had an event this last Saturday. So we had some information available to folks there. So this is certainly not comprehensive things we could do, but this is a pretty good list that I feel really led to the high numbers of responses we got. So we'll really take a look at this and see what worked well and how to amplify the future engagements that we try to do, both throughout route redesign as well as the facility design process. So like I mentioned, I pulled together the questions from the survey that I could. There were a number of questions that just needed to be open-ended questions, and those are kind of harder to synthesize in a quick way. But as far as vehicle ownership, you can see we had over 100 people who did not own a vehicle who responded to our survey, and then several hundred who did own 1, 2, or 3 or more. Text on here might be hard to read, but the question was about the main source of transportation for folks who were taking our survey. The tallest bar is folks who primarily use a car to get around. But I think more than 130 people who primarily use the fixed route bus to get around town, as well as a handful in these other categories. As far as how often people ride the bus, I think we got a pretty good mix. I mean, I was really interested that we heard from people who both did and didn't ride the bus. I think that's valuable. I think we're trying to plan for a system that absolutely serves people who take the bus very well, but we're also trying to identify gaps. If there's people in our community who aren't taking the bus, how can we make it work for everybody? So pretty happy with the distribution here of people who do and don't ride. Age distribution, large respondent from that college age, 18 to 24. We always get great responses when KU sends out through their distribution channel to students. So you see a lot of responses there. But pretty balanced from 25 on. We got over 50 responses from all those categories. So you can see we're missing that younger age group. So it might cause us to think about how we better reach high school students or middle school students who might be riding the bus. Got around 60, I believe, people with a disability that replied. So, one of the things I want to do with this data is compare it against our census demographics to see if we got a representative number, percentage-wise, of people with disability who replied, as well as age and other things. But good to see that we saw, over 50 people responding with a disability. I think is good. It's good for us. Commute time, you would expect to see, a lot of people who live and work in Lawrence, you'd expect to see a lot of commute times in the 10 to 20 minute range. I would expect some of the higher higher ranges means we didn't get a whole lot of people who commute outside of the community who responded to the survey. There are a few other questions that I really tried to give you some sort of graph tonight and just wasn't able to pull it together, but there's a few of these questions that they just require a little more cleanup on the back end for me to get a good chart. But I think these will be very interesting. You know, what bus routes or different services that we have do people use, common reasons for taking trips, and then our race and ethnicity splits. And also just this long list of questions where we necessarily needed to ask some open-ended questions to get the data that we wanted. The result of that is just it does create a lot of back-end work from those survey responses where we really have to sift through and categorize what people told us, potentially map some of the information that we got. So this will take a little bit of time, but I would expect us to put up a similar document to what you all saw in August when we had gotten our feedback about route changes and we showed graphs and charts and before and after maps, and we characterized what we heard from people and how we were moving forward with that information. I would expect a similar type of document to come out of all this information that we got. It would be a very useful tool for the KU students to use as they build route concepts. So that's what I had there. I guess before I exit the slideshow, does anyone have questions about anything they've seen here? Because we're short on time, I won't let it last too long and I'll move on, and please email me or get with me and we can talk about those. And I believe that I'm going to maybe ask the chair or ask the committee if they would rather stay on agenda item number 2 and talk about the kind of challenging question prompts that I had provided for folks, or if we want to touch on the dashboard, the draft dashboard. I might see if the chair and the committee have thoughts on what they prefer. Probably only have time for one.
Heather Tice, PTAC chair. I'm open. I was thinking maybe stay on 2, but on agenda item 2, but it's up to the committee also.
Al Ackland, a PTAC member. I'm going to have to sign off and head down the road today. So thanks for a good meeting. I'll see you next month.
All right, thank you, Alan. Heather Tice, PTAC chair. Is there anyone else that would like to weigh in on whether we stay with agenda item 2 or move on?
Mike Wasikowski, PTAC member. As much as I love dashboards, I think we should stick with this topic.
Okay. Heather Tice, PTAC chair. Adam, you've heard a response, so
Okay.
we'll stay with 2.
This is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. So I had emailed out, there's a few of these questions I posed, and I'll gingerly walk into this. I don't expect any of you to plant a stake in the ground and take a hard position, because a lot of these either or questions are meant to be almost unanswerable. There's pros and cons to both sides of them, but I think as we get into route redesign, I'm interested in what PTAC members think, or what sort of pros and cons you weigh in your mind when you think about these things. And I expect these questions to come up, definitely in the spring version of our route redesign study. But I wanted to just have a quick touch point now and see if we could get any discussion or thoughts around this. So I sent 3 questions out to the group, and I'll just pose the first one and see if there's any responses or thoughts. The first question being, would you be willing to walk further for more frequent transit service? And this is a common kind of coverage versus frequency question, and there's good arguments on both sides, but just interested to hear anybody's thoughts about that double-sided coin.
This is Mike Wazakowski. What kinds of distances would you envision including in that? Like 500 feet, half a mile? What would be the bounds, really?
I think that this is Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I think we'll find that out through route redesign discussions. I think commonly you see in transit a half mile being one of the standards that's put out there. It's about a 15-minute walk. As a transit user, I find a quarter mile to be more practical, especially when you think about some routes not having sidewalks and different things. Quarter mile is often closer to what people are willing to do. But I see Janan raising her hand, so I'll let her speak.
Yeah, I want to complain. In 2018, I walked 15 minutes to the bus stop and 15 minutes back. So in 2019, I switched to the bike. So make sure that you do not propose that to people, to have such a long walk to the bus stop. And then I didn't know, I wasn't sure that these questions for us, for testing with us, to check, to see what's our opinion on this. But yeah, it's good that I see we can make an input on this. So there is the 15-minute walk, please avoid it. There is the London Institute of Economics, where they have a very prominent international urban institute, and they suggest that the walk to the bus stop not be more than 5 minutes. Otherwise, you would lose ridership. And I mean, that's what happened in Lawrence during the past 2 years, right? And then it would be good to consider that the people who use the bus stop because they do not have a car in the household, they do shopping using using the transit. So just please keep in mind that people might be carrying 20 pounds walking back home, from the grocery store. This is my input on this.
Lance Tay, Vice Chair, PTAC. I would really like to discuss these questions more, but we do not have the time right now in this meeting. It's already after 5:20, and I have things I'd like to say, but I'm not going to say them now because we're about out of time. So could we agree to share emails or discuss them next month or something? Because I kind of feel like there's not enough time to say what needs to be said.
I move that we table this discussion until November.
Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. I think I move also that we table this until next meeting.
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. That seems like a good idea.
Okay. Is there any other agenda? Is that okay with everyone else? I'm thinking that it probably is. So do we want to skip agenda 3? And do you guys just want to give any other staff updates?
Adam Weigel, Transit and Parking Manager. I'll just briefly say that our 7 bus stop sites we're improving are well underway. A lot of that concrete has gone in, so we're looking towards getting the actual amenities installed on them shortly. But just excited to be able to show some before and after pictures to you all, or if you're out and around and see them.
Heather Tice, PTAC Chair. Thank you so much for that. I'm excited to see those. And any other agenda items? I feel like if we start something, we won't be able to finish it. So I would like to move that we adjourn the meeting a little bit early. Is that okay? Okay. Thank you all. We have our meeting next month, and we will make sure that we revisit the questions that were posed today, and we'll have a more in-depth discussion. Thank you so much, and take care. The meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, team.
Bye.